right. Welcome, everyone, to Dark Dialogue, the podcast where we dive deep into the mysteries that haunt small towns and big cities alike. I'm your host, John.
And I'm your host, Angela.
All right, let's dive into this episode. The Kindness That Killed. It's just after midnight on October 1st, 2019, in the small town of Laurel, Montana. A 57-year-old woman named Lori Bray locks up the Cedar Ridge Casino where she's worked for years. She's tired, but kind-hearted, the kind of person who'd never leave someone stranded. That night, she offers a young man a ride home. It's an act of generosity that will cost her everything. Now, by the next day, her body is found in a ditch, and the community is left reeling. This is the story of Lori Bray, a tale of kindness, betrayal, and a murder that shocked a quiet town to its core. So today we're going to dive into the tragic death of Lori Bray. Lori Sue Bray was born in Billings, Montana on May 14th, 1962, to parents Norwood and Kathleen Simpson. There isn't very much information about her childhood that I could find. About the only thing that I did find was from her obituary, which states, after moving to cattle ranches near Harrison, Montana, and then later Manhattan, she returned to Billings and graduated from Billings Senior High in 1980. Lori was such a sweet lady and would help anyone that asked. It also says that she had one sister and three brothers, Sister Linda Jorgensen of Billings, Montana, and loving brothers Lonnie Maiden of Kalispell, Montana, and Gail Maiden of Billings, Montana, as well as Don Simpson of Prineville, Oregon. I couldn't find any information on the different last names of the brothers, so I don't know if her mother was married twice or what exactly the reason for that was. And one saving grace is that her parents died before she did, so they at least didn't have to go through the misery of losing a child.
Laurel, Montana is a small town of about 6,700 people. 15 miles southwest of Billings, nestled along the Yellowstone River, Laurel is a tight-knit community, blue-collar roots tied to the railroad and oil refinery. A place where people know their neighbors. Laurel isn't the kind of place you'd expect a brutal murder. It's the kind of town where folks wave from porches and leave doors unlocked. But on October 1st, 2019, that sense of safety was shattered. A little personal touch for us in this story is that Billings is the closest, larger city to us. Billings has a population of about 120,000 people and is the place to go for all the small communities within a couple hundred miles. It's where we go to do any major shopping, go to doctors, or to find a decent restaurant other than the same old local fare. For us, Laurel is really just a place to turn on your way to Billings or maybe to fill up with gas on the way home. Side note, it's also my favorite Walmart.
Interesting.
To set the scene a little further, I pulled this description of Laurel from the city's website. The city of Laurel began in 1806 when Captain William Clark of the famous Lewis and Clark expedition camped at the mouth of the Clark's Fork River where it meets the Yellowstone River. This site eventually became the town of Carlton and later changed to the name Laurel because of an abundant local shrub found in the hometown of a railroad official from North Carolina. As time went on, the location of Laurel moved north and west, away from the Yellowstone River to its present location. Laurel has approximately 6,300 people living within the city, and another 5,000 in the surrounding area. It is truly the small-town atmosphere that gives people living and working here. We have 3 grade schools, a middle school, high school, and several private schools. Our public high school graduates an average of 140 students each spring and is the home of the Laurel locomotives. Our residents enjoy a modern bowling alley, skating rink, and a fitness center complete with a swimming pool, weight room, hot tub, exercise equipment, and aerobic classes.
You know how small it is when they are advertising the bowling alley.
And a hot tub, yeah. And their library. The Laurel Public Library is located at 720 West 3rd Street and offers free internet Wi-Fi access to visitors. Jump on that. Outdoor recreation includes Riverside Park, Buffalo Mirage Fishing Access, Laurel Golf Club, and Cooney Dam. Laurel is the site of the district's 6C boys and girls basketball tournament and the 4th of July American Legion International Baseball Tournament. I did not know that.
I didn't either.
Major employers in Laurel include Montana Rail Rink and the Cenex Harvest States Refinery. Laurel straddles both sides of an intricate pattern of railroad tracks, the largest and busiest rail yard in Montana. It extends for 2.5 miles on a wedge-shaped piece of land between East Main and Shannon Road. Montana Rail Link has owned the yard since 1987. Burlington Northern opened it in 1970 to 1987, and Northern Pacific ran it prior to that, with the first recorded train stopping in Laurel in 1882. The Laurel Leaf Refinery began operating in 1930. In 1943, the refinery was purchased by Farmers Union Central Exchange. In 1972, the company adopted the new name of Cenex Harvest States Refinery. Laurel hosts the largest free fireworks display in Montana. Did know that. Have seen it. It's pretty good.
I've never gone up to it before.
Which is put on by our volunteer fire department. Each year, the event attracts approximately 5,000 to 10,000 people from all over the state and Wyoming. Laurel has 5 motels and 1 bed and breakfast. There are 10 restaurants, with 4 of them open to full banquet facilities. Laurel truly is the hub of Montana. From here, all roads lead to the exciting historical and recreational attractions of Montana and Wyoming. From Laurel, you can select one of 4 outstanding entrances into Yellowstone Park, those being Cody, Red Lodge, Beartooth Highway, Gardner, or West Yellowstone. 2 major highways south will take you to Wyoming. Head east 13 miles to Montana's largest city, Billings, and 40 miles east to the most prominent Lewis and Clark landmark, Pompey's Pillar. Custer Battlefield, site of the most famous Indian battle, is 77 miles east of Laurel. A little to the south, you'll find the majestic Bighorn Canyon, which holds Yellowtail Reservoir, unique for its sheer beauty and adventure boater. Below that is the river some call the finest trout stream in the world, the Bighorn. Approximately 295 miles northeast of Laurel, you will find the nation's largest earth-filled dam at Fort Peck, backing up an enormous reservoir on the Missouri River with some of the best warm water fishing in the West. West of Laurel, the renowned Yellowstone River offers some of the finest trout fishing in the world. Drive north to the fabulous beauty of Glacier Park near the Canadian border.
So now we know all about Laurel, having been through there about 1,000,000 times. Hopefully, though, everybody has a better idea of the town we're visiting this week. Now let's get back to the story at hand. Lori Bray. Now, while headed to work on the morning of October 2nd, Lori's boss, Kathy Culp, noticed Lori's car oddly parked on the side of the road. Later, Lori doesn't show up for her afternoon shift, which was very out of character for her. She was consistent, extremely reliable, so her boss and coworkers knew that something had to be wrong. Now, because Kathy had seen Lori's car oddly parked earlier that morning, she became extremely worried. She called Lori's son, Justin, to tell him about the car and that his mother hadn't shown up for work. Justin was already worried because he had a very close relationship with his mother. They talked at least once a day, and he hadn't heard from her, and his calls to her had gone unanswered. So Kathy met Justin, then led him to Lori's car, which was still in the same place that she'd seen it earlier that morning. Now, her car was parked and obviously abandoned near Buffalo Trail Road, about 2 miles from the casino. Kathy and Justin knew better than to enter the car, but when they were looking through the windows, they could see the clothes that Lori had been wearing the night before. They were clearly visible in the back seat, and they could see her jeans with her shirt, underwear, and her bra. In addition to this, they could see Lori's cigarettes. There was bloodstains on the seat and a broken turn signal lever. Justin was frantically calling his mom's phone when he realized that it and her car keys were also inside the car. So Justin and Kathy could immediately see that something was wrong. The car told a story of struggle, a fight that no one saw coming. Justin called 911 and the sheriff's office responded and started a search. As many as 50 friends, family, and other volunteers from the community showed up to help out, but there was no sign of Lori, other than the eerie state of her abandoned car. So the search continued the next day with the same results. Searchers covered a large area around the abandoned car, but there was no sign of Lori. A little after 8 o'clock that evening, a man named Matthew Brown was searching for agates on an ATV, and he discovered the body of a naked woman laying in the fetal position at the foot of a tree in a ditch near Yard Office Road and Ridge Drive, only 3 miles from her car. Matthew immediately called the police to report the grisly discovery, and they responded to find the badly battered body of a petite blonde woman. The body was covered in bruises. There was swelling around her eyes, blood in her hair, and abrasions on her stomach. The autopsy would later confirm that the cause of her death was strangulation. With heavy hearts, the responding officers were pretty sure that they had found the missing Lori. There isn't a long list of missing women in Laurel, and the medical examiner would later confirm the officer's suspicions. The body in the ditch was that of 57-year-old Lori Sue Bray. With the cause of death being revealed, along with the obvious signs of struggle at the scene, the Yellowstone County Sheriff, Mike Linder, directed this investigation to be handled as an obvious homicide. The following morning, investigators found shoe impressions near where the body was found. These matched those found in and around her abandoned car. Police took casts of the footprints. They also found blood in the car and skin under Lori's fingernails, both of which were sent to the lab for analysis. Officers contacted Matthew Brown, the man who had found Lori, and compared his shoe prints to the impressions found in and around the scene. They didn't match. However, he still remained a suspect at that time because they couldn't be sure that he was being honest about what shoes he was wearing at the time that he discovered the body. It's a scene that haunts Laurel to this day. Lori stripped of everything, left like a bag of trash as if she didn't matter. She did matter, though. She mattered to her family, her friends, co-workers, and the town would not let this go unanswered. Investigators immediately started digging into Lori's actions on her last day alive. They knew that she was last seen at the casino, closing the night before. They interviewed her co-workers and asked if there was anyone that they could think of that might have killed Lori. Several of her co-workers and Kathy, her boss, mentioned a man that went by the name of Benj. Lori's co-worker, Shannon Plotner, described Benj as an oddball, kind of stalker type to Lori. Her and her other co-workers said that he really only came to the casino when Lori was working and was almost always there if she was. Shannon said that Benj had started to get kind of territorial with Lori, and there was a lot of speculation among co-workers that he could have been the one to do this. Investigators identified Benj as Benj Stoner. They interviewed Benj and asked him about his relationship with Lori. He stated that they were just good friends. Because Benj could be seen on the surveillance video from the casino on the night that Lori disappeared, they asked him for his alibi. Now, he claimed that he worked that day and then stopped off at the casino for a while. He said that he left the casino around 10:45, went home and ate some dinner. He claimed he watched TV for a while and then went to bed alone. Police took Benj's shoes to compare them to the shoe impressions and then asked him directly if he killed Lori. Benj said that he had nothing to do with Lori's murder. Because of his behavior with Lori and a lack of an alibi that could be confirmed, Benj remained a suspect. Investigators reviewed Lori's cell phone records from that night and found that after leaving work, she traveled to a few places around Laurel. They could see that one of those places was a home in Laurel before she eventually drove out to where her car would later be found. Their surveillance footage from the casino shows several patrons other than Benj present that night. Now, one of these is a young man who approaches the bar late, and you can see Lori requesting to see his ID before she serves him. He then goes to a video poker machine very near the bar where he has a casual conversation with some of the other patrons as Lori began to clean up and get ready to close. Near midnight, Lori can be seen motioning to the clock, signifying to the young man who was the last customer left in the casino that it was closing time, and he leaves the casino as Lori continues her closing routine. Now on the video, Lori can be seen finishing up her cleaning, and then she walks out the doors and seems to head to her car. But then she turns around and slowly walks back towards the casino door. And you can tell that she's talking to somebody. Next, you see her opening her car's passenger door and someone climbing into the seat next to her before they drive off together. Investigators asked Lori's co-workers if they recognized the young man. One of them recognized him as a former co-worker, Diego Hernandez. It wasn't unusual for Lori to offer somebody a ride. She was described as extremely sweet and also wanting to help. She had given rides to people that needed them before. It was just who she was. But this time, she didn't know who she was letting into her car. Kathy Culp, Lori's boss, said that Lori had experienced domestic violence in her past, and because of that, she was extremely passive. She described a time when a customer had demanded that Lori leave with him, and because she didn't want to make him mad, she complied. Kathy said that Lori had put herself in other dangerous situations because of her fear of making a man upset. With this new knowledge, police set out to find Diego Hernandez. So, who was Diego Hernandez? So let's shift gears slightly and learn a bit about this odd young man and his background. Now, around 15 years after Lori was born, another woman named Bianca Wilson was also born in Montana. I say around 15 years because most of the information that I was able to find claimed that she was born around 1977. I did do a name search for her, and I think there is a good chance that she was born on July 17th, 1980. Now, I can't be positive of that date, though, so I'm just throwing it out as a likely possibility. Court records from 2004, however, list her at the age of 27, which would put her birthday in or near 1977. So there was no information on her childhood, but the way that she turned out makes me think that it probably wasn't the greatest. We know that she got pregnant and gave birth to a son sometime in 1997, when she was around 20 or so. Now, I don't know if she had any other children, either before or after this, but she named this son Diego Thomas, and he took the last name of his father, Tracy Joe Hernandez. Now, nearly all of the information that we have on Bianca Wilson is from court records, which she has plenty of. Just reading through her interactions with law enforcement shows a less than healthy childhood for young Diego. Police records indicate that she was present at the 1997 shooting death of her then boyfriend, Diego's father, Tracy Joe Hernandez, in Billings. Family members suspected her involvement, but Wilson claimed that it was a suicide, and no charges were filed at that time. The Billings Police Department reopened the case as a homicide investigation around 2006, though no resolution is publicly documented. Tracy's death left Diego, born in 96 or 97, to be raised by his paternal grandparents, Margaret and Dale Locks, after Wilson lost custody, which was possibly due to her legal troubles. A temporary order of protection was filed by Margaret Locks against Bianca Wilson, which underscores this arrangement. Now, in 2004, she was charged for murder in a different case, the September 14, 2004 murder of Justin Marchant, a 30-year-old man from Cali, Wyoming, not too far from us. Marchant's body was discovered on a rural road in Carbon County, Montana, just north of the Wyoming state line, having been shot and either ejected or having jumped out of the vehicle. Wilson was initially arrested on September 17th, 2004, 3 days after the body was found, and she was charged with deliberate homicide and aggravated kidnapping. Prosecutors alleged that she shot Marchant while they were passengers in a blue Ford Taurus, which was driven by Jesus Villarreal Jr., and possibly motivated by suspicions that Marchant was a confidential informant. The deliberate homicide and aggravated kidnapping charges against Wilson were dismissed on April 27, 2005, after 7 months. That was when prosecutors conceded that they lacked sufficient evidence to secure a conviction. However, on the same day, both Wilson and Villarreal faced felony tampering charges in Yellowstone County for allegedly hiding and cleaning blood from the Taurus where Marchant was shot. Now, evidence showed that the car had been wiped down, though no murder weapon was recovered. Villarreal later took a plea deal, pleading no contest and testifying against Wilson in exchange for immunity. At Wilson's trial in February 2006, a jury convicted her of tampering with evidence after deliberating for just 90 minutes. And then on May 18, 2006, District Judge Susan Waters sentenced her to 5 years in the Montana Woman's Prison, rejecting a defense request for a suspended sentence. Prosecutors had pushed for the maximum 10-year term, citing Wilson's perceived risk to the community, while the victim's mother, Connie Marchant, expressed deep anguish during the sentencing and confronted Wilson directly. And then in May 2008, while Wilson was still incarcerated, the Montana Attorney General's office refiled the deliberate homicide charge against her, claiming new evidence had emerged. However, this charge was dismissed with prejudice on March 23, 2009, by Carbon County District Judge Blair Jones, who ruled that the state had violated Wilson's right to a speedy trial. The delay of 548 days from the arrest to the scheduled trial far exceeded the 200-day threshold for review under Montana law. A critical factor was the prosecution's last-minute delivery of 600 pages of crime lab evidence to the defense in December 2008, forcing a trial postponement. The dismissal barred any future refiling of the murder charge related to Marchant's death. Wilson completed her tampering sentence and was released in May 2011.
So does that fall under double jeopardy then?
Which? Does what?
That the dismissal barred any future refiling.
It doesn't fall under double jeopardy, but when a judge dismisses something with prejudice, it means that it can never be brought again. They can also dismiss it without prejudice, which means that, the prosecution could correct whatever was wrong and then refile, or find more evidence and then refile. Double jeopardy would come into play if she was charged with that murder and found not guilty, and then they could never charge her again.
Well, don't get me started on judicial BS, because
there's plenty of it.
We'll be here all night.
All right. So on July 31st, 2012, she was arraigned in Yellowstone County District Court on felony charges of carrying a concealed weapon, alongside misdemeanor counts of criminal mischief and resisting arrest, stemming from a July 20th, 2012 altercation at a South Billings residence. Police alleged that she fled officers, reached into her shirt, which prompted concerns that she had a knife, and was subdued with the use of a taser, after which a large knife was found nearby. So she's obviously a peach.
Yes, I want to be her best friend.
Oh, yes, yeah. I think I'll invite her for Thanksgiving.
There you go.
So the outcome of this case isn't detailed in any available records that I could find, but it reflects ongoing legal entanglements. Prosecutors at the time noted her status as a convicted felon and her 2 prior misdemeanor charges for resisting arrest and obstructing. I couldn't find anything else about dear old Bianca, but I did pull up pictures of her, and I showed them to you. And boy, she looks like something else.
Something else is an understatement, yes.
She has what I think are poorly done teardrop tattoos at the corner of both of her eyes.
Blown out, too.
Yeah, they're terrible. I could see 3 on the left side and 2 on the right, but again, they're horrible, so who knows? Teardrop tattoos are supposed to signify people that you have killed. Now, I have absolutely no idea what hers mean, but she does strike me as someone that could have potentially killed 5 people. So I've become pretty convinced already that she killed the 2 that we know about, because I think she definitely killed Diego's father.
Yeah.
And I think she killed the dude from Cali.
Yeah. I want to know why they fight murder charges so hard, but they're going to brand their eyes with how many people they supposedly killed.
Oh, I know, it's insanity.
Come on.
You can't, the sane can never understand the insane.
This is very true.
All right, so circling back to October 1st, 2019, which was the night that Lori went missing, Diego Hernandez was 22 years old. He was a Laurel local with no prior criminal record of any significance that I could find, but a young man described as troubled. I don't know how he couldn't be troubled with the childhood that we just talked about. With that being said, though, a lot of people have bad childhoods, and they don't grow up to be monsters, so that is absolutely no excuse. Now, throughout the night, Diego had been to several other bars. Some report that at these other bars, he'd made women feel uncomfortable and had been rejected multiple times. It's also important to note that those that saw him said that he looked normal. Even if he was acting creepy, he had no obvious scratches on his face, and footage from the Locomotive Bar earlier that evening shows the same thing. Nothing terribly remarkable about him that night. And then footage from the casino agrees with that. You can see Diego's face clearly, and it is easy to see that he has no scratches on it, and nothing about him is abnormal.
But he was normal, but creepy.
He was creepy. If you've watched the security video, he seems off. I don't know.
He is off.
There's something about him that just rubs you wrong, like as soon as you see him.
It's a gut. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's knowing what he was going to do or if he just had a creepy vibe.
Both?
Yeah, I think probably both.
Both. His aura was just like, he was shady.
Yeah. So Diego wasn't a stranger to Laurel, but he was not a regular at the Cedar Ridge either. So what brought him there that night? Well, we don't know. But what happened next changed everything. Now, as I alluded to before, because the camera pointed out the front door, you could see Lori as she locked the doors and headed to her car. She then pauses at the end of the sidewalk and turns back towards the front doors. She's obviously talking to someone, although you can't see anybody else there in the frame. Next, Lori pulls her car up to the end of the sidewalk and opens the passenger side door. You can see someone dressed the same as Diego get into the car, and they pull away from the casino at 12:30 a.m. You can watch on the surveillance footage as her 2003 Chrysler heads out into the night. Now, by analyzing the cell phone records of both Lori and Diego, investigators were able to track their movements after leaving the casino. They show that the house Lori went to was that of Diego Hernandez. Both her and Diego's phones are used to track their movements. From Cedar Ridge Casino, then toward Diego's home on East 12th Street, then to where her car is later found near Laurel Airport Road and Buffalo Trail, and then finally near Yard Office Road. Her phone stops moving at 1:36 a.m. That's the last digital trace of Lori Bray alive. Somewhere in those 66 minutes, something went horribly wrong. So on October 4th, deputies visit Diego at his house. He admits to the ride and claims that Lori dropped him off and then left. He says that he never saw her again after the car pulled out of sight. Deputies notice that he's got fresh scratches all over his face. And have you seen the interview was with him? Like, he is ripped up.
Yeah, he is.
But he didn't act nervous, and he claimed that the scratches were from a fight that he'd had with a friend a few days earlier at Planet Lockwood. And when asked who this friend was, he said that it was Nick O'Neill. Investigators bring Nick O'Neill in for an interview, and he says that he had been friends with Diego since he was 14 years old and had never seen any violence from him. He stated that he had never seen Diego be disrespectful or vulgar to women. He described Diego as a down-to-earth, genuine, kind-hearted person. Nick said that he last saw Diego 2 days before the murder at Planet Lockwood, which is another casino in the area. He says that that night Diego started acting very irritated at him. Diego was mad because Nick had been treating him, and I quote, some certain way, and started, quote, freaking out on Nick in his car. Nick states that he started to pull Diego out of his car, and Diego started fighting with him. He then says that he put him in a headlock, and because Diego started punching him, Nick punched him back. He then said that he finally got Diego out of his car, and then he drove off, leaving Diego standing there. Police checked Nick's hands for cuts and took a look at his jewelry, and they also reviewed his cell phone to confirm his story. Nick told investigators that, quote, not in 1,000 years would Diego be part of the murder of Lori. When shown pictures of Diego's face, he was positive that there was no way that he made those scratches that night. And as I said before, witnesses and video from the night that Lori disappeared said the same thing. And that video's out there on the internet. Anybody can look it up, and you can see the guy didn't have scratches. And like we said earlier, I mean, these scratches are huge, obvious scratches. You would have seen them on the video.
Plus, if Nick is admitting to fighting with him, why wouldn't he admit to scratching him?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
even from the video from that casino, moments before Lori offered him a ride, it shows Diego's face clear of any scratches. So police investigators took Diego's shoes and they matched them to the tread prints found near Lori's body in and near her car. The phone data that places Diego at the casino, his home, in both crime scenes that night, and then the DNA results finally come back. It was found to be a match for the skin found under Lori's nails. It wasn't just a run-of-the-mill match either. The odds on that match were 1 in 60 octillion that it was Diego's. And that's a damn big number.
Kind of going down, Diego.
Yeah, it's not looking good for him. Blood in the car was found to be a mixture of Lori and Diego's DNA. This wasn't just circumstantial anymore. It was a web that was closing in, and everything was pointing in only one direction. It was also discovered that Diego washed and bleached his clothes and shoes, but you can't wash away shoe treads or explain DNA under a victim's fingernails. And I might wash my shoes from time to time, but I sure as hell have never bleached them.
Yeah, big red flag.
Yeah. Now, around this time, Diego decided to change his story. So now he claimed that he and Lori were involved in an ongoing affair.
Of course.
And when asked why nobody else knew about it, he claimed that Lori had told him to keep it a secret. He claimed that they had been involved for some time and that they had had consensual sex that night, which she apparently clawed the crap out of him, leaving his DNA under her fingernails. And, you know, I know in most sexual encounters, men walk away with scratches all over their face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All the time.
All the time.
All the time.
So detectives reviewed Diego's cell phone, and they saw that, as much in love as these two were,
right?
They had never contacted each other, and he had no contacts saved.
It's telepathic love. Telepathic love.
It's gotta be telepathic. So there was absolutely zero record of his cell phone ever calling or texting Lori, or vice versa. So they never communicated. And perhaps even bigger than that is the video that shows Lori asking for Diego's ID that night at the casino. Had they been involved in any kind of relationship, she surely would have known that he was 22 and able to drink.
Let me ask you a question.
Shoot.
Is Montana a state where you have to ID no matter what? I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I don't know for sure, but I do know that both newspapers and some of the news reports that I saw mentioned that same thing, that because she asked for his ID, there was no way that they knew each other.
Indicates.
Okay. Yeah. And I also definitely got the vibe that people like Binge and the other regulars weren't ID'd every time.
Right.
So I think it's obvious that if she knew him, she would have served him.
Like Cheers. She knows his name. Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. And just a personal perspective on that, although it's not impossible, I think it's very unlikely that beautiful, and she was a gorgeous woman.
She was.
57-year-old would choose to become involved in a sexual relationship with a man who was younger than her own son.
And shady.
And
abnormally
shady, creepy. I mean, again, it's not impossible. I suppose it happens from time to time, but it is way beyond the normal.
Right.
And she just didn't strike me as that kind of person.
No.
So
didn't her family members say that she really wasn't interested in dating anyway? She just loved her dogs, and that's all she wanted.
Yeah, not only her family members, but her boss. And it wasn't like a normal boss-employee relationship, because they actually were roommates for quite some time beforehand.
Oh, yeah.
And so her boss knew her very well.
Insight to her, yeah.
Yep, and they both were dog lovers, and so Kathy, her boss, said, that they would take turns watching each other's dogs and all that kind of stuff. And all the research and everything I did, it kind of almost seemed like Lori's priorities had significantly shifted as she got older, and she wasn't really looking for romance. She was looking more, like you said, to help out, dogs that were in trouble and that kind of thing. Yeah. So she just wasn't.
Just wanted to live her life and take care of family.
Yeah, and she just wasn't the kind of person that's going to go sleeping around with a 22-year-old kid.
That you just met.
Yeah. Yeah,
that seems creepy.
It's so unlikely.
Right.
So we know Diego's a liar. And then on October 8th, 2019, Diego was arrested at home and charged with deliberate homicide. His bond was set at $500,000, and the community reacted with shock and grief. A vigil for Lori was held at Riverside Park. Laurel mourned Lori, but they also demanded justice. Diego was in custody, just like Mama. Would he talk? No. The trial began on March 15th, 2021, in the Yellowstone County District Court with Judge Michael Moses presiding. Diego pleads not guilty, so the prosecutor's opening statement is that Lori Bray's kindness was her undoing. Diego Hernandez repaid it with violence. So on day 3 of the trial, it was time for the forensic experts. Lacey Van Grinsven, who is a serologist, and Joseph Pasternak, who was a DNA supervisor, both testify. They speak about the forensic evidence found at the scene and about the DNA matching the blood in the car and under Lori's fingernails. Although there was no semen found, Lori did have multiple defensive wounds. And then on day 4, Detective Troy Arbonneau testified about how he had traced the cell phones and Lori's movements aligned with Diego's story. They then diverged to her death site. I watched interviews with this guy, and I think he is like a normal kind of detective, but his specialty is definitely the cell phones and the technology side of it. It seemed like that was really his wheelhouse. So, it wasn't just a run-of-the-mill detective. It was really somebody that specialized in this kind of stuff. Now, Diego's defense attorneys initially claimed that Lori dropped him off at home and he never saw her again after she pulled away. This is Diego's original story, and then he changed his story, and now his lawyers are changing it back.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then on October 7th, his lawyers make a new claim that Diego and Lori had consensual sex at his shack, and then she left on her own.
Shack.
Yeah. So you have defense attorneys changing the story in the trial, which is really bad. And then the prosecution countered that there had been no prior contact between the two, and they could prove that with phone records.
Mm-hmm.
There was no scratches on his face earlier that evening. And then they also talked about the blood and the mud in the car and the footprints and everything that matched Diego's. So
convenient skin from said scratches under her nails.
Exactly. And again,
wonderful.
For reference, they found his blood mixed with hers in the car. So,
and that what was that octillion something or other match?
1 in 60 octillion. It's Diego's.
How many zeros is octillion? That's a lot. That's a lot.
Well, that's a lot. I don't even know. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. I'm not mathematician enough. I don't know if octillion comes after trillion. I don't think so.
I didn't even know octillion was a thing until we started reading this. So
yeah, you're asking the wrong guy on that. It's a hell of a big number. I know that.
Yes, it's very large.
Way more than the population of the entire world for probably the last, I don't know, 300 years or something like that. So yeah, it's Diego.
It's Diego.
So then on day 5, the defense questioned the forensic peer review and if proper procedures had been followed. They also suggested that the results couldn't be relied upon because of the lack of retests. They claimed that the scratches were from the fight with Nick O'Neill, but the defense called no witnesses. And they really weren't able to offer much of a defense at all. Like I said, they changed their story in the middle of the trial, so they quickly rested their case.
Well, who would have been their witnesses? Nick? That's it.
Yeah, and he would have been a better prosecution witness. So I don't know what as a defense attorney, I don't know what you do. You have tried and true DNA evidence, and likely they probably tried to find experts to refute it. I don't know that, but I'm guessing. And probably those experts looked at it and was like, yeah, this is irrefutable.
I'm not perjuring myself for this.
Yeah. I'm not going to be no help to you. So I don't know, but they called no witnesses. And then the prosecution claimed that every piece of evidence pointed to Diego. And they said that he took her life and her dignity. The defense said that there was enough reasonable doubt to suggest that he didn't commit the crime, and they asked the jurors not to rush to judgment. So I've looked at a ton of true crime cases. I mean, this one is like an open and shut. Mm-hmm. There's some of them that I've read that, or watched or whatever, that you get to the end and you're like, boy, I don't know. It could go either way. This one is this is ironclad. Yeah. I mean, I'm very confident that they got the right dude. And then when you look at his childhood, his mother's a murderer. I think we can say that. Yeah. At least in my opinion, she's a murderer.
There's slight things to say about nature versus nurture, but growing up like that,
yeah. I mean, if he'd have grown up to be a great man or something like that, okay, that's one thing. But he grew up to be a creepy murderer, and that just kind of follows Mama's footsteps. So, I don't know. That's my opinion anyway.
He's joining the family business.
Exactly. So, on March 22nd, 2021, the jurors began deliberations. And they only deliberated for 2 hours. And then they announced that they had reached a verdict. Diego and his attorneys got to be crapping in their britches right now, because 2 hours of deliberation is usually not a good thing for the defense. So as Diego stood to hear his fate, the jury announced that they had found him guilty of deliberate homicide. So on June 14th, 2021, Diego was back in the courtroom for sentencing. The judge sentenced him to life in prison with no chance of parole for at least 35 years. Diego, who is now 24, was sent to Montana State Prison in Deer Lodge. Which, have you ever been there?
No, but I read a lot about it, and no, not the place I want to be.
I did the prison tour of the old prison up there, and it's pretty freaking badass. But I have a thing for touring prisons, so
Well, I would tour them. I just have never, because Rollins is on the list.
it's a freaking cool one too. I've been there a couple times, but anyway, I hate this life sentence with no chance of parole for 35 years. This 35 to life thing. I think the dude deserves a life sentence with no chance of parole, and he's young enough at 24 that if he does 35 years and is paroled,
60.
Yeah, he's still got a lot of years left, most likely.
To kill some more.
Yeah. I mean, he needs to either be locked away or put to death, and that's my opinion. So, where is Diego today? Well, he's still in Deer Lodge, and there's no appeals noted as of when I wrote this on March 16th, 2025. And he'll be, like you said, he'll be nearly 60 before he becomes eligible for parole. So why did he do it? Who the hell knows?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's something that we'll never be able to understand. Lori was 57 years old, but like I said earlier, she really didn't look it.
Not at all.
She was extremely beautiful, and I think that he just wanted to take what he would never be able to have by consent.
Right.
You know, it's like we talked about before. This woman isn't going to give this 22-year-old kid the time of day. No. It's just not going to happen. It's the same damn story of all of these guys. It just makes no sense. It's never made sense to me. You know, I would rather have a world completely full of beautiful women.
And we thank you for that.
Yes. I mean, it's just logical, isn't it? Right. So I'll never be able to understand men that hurt and destroy beautiful women. It just makes no sense. But the sane will never be able to really understand the insane. It just, our brains work differently.
That is correct.
I think Diego's brain was broken and didn't work.
He didn't stand a chance, to be honest. Not that I'm defending him, but he just didn't stand a chance.
Well, he had a terrible childhood.
Yeah.
I mean, he was raised by his grandparents.
Do we know where they are now?
I wasn't able to find anything about them at all. And it was the paternal grandparents, so it was his dad's mom and dad's. Maybe they grew him up better than he would have been raised by his mom. I don't know.
Can you imagine then?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know.
Yeah.
So I saw it asked if Diego planned this or if it was just random. And unless Diego decides to talk, which he's never done, he still claims that he's innocent, we're never going to know the answer to that question.
Well, do you happen to know when the last time somebody tried to talk to him?
I honestly have no idea. Because he was out earlier that night and he was trying to pick up other women, I seriously doubt that he had some grand plan to go and kidnap and rape Lori. Otherwise, why would you be trying to pick up other women and take them home, you know? So
it's just a female of any kind, probably.
Yeah, and that is really my best guess. I think that he was out drinking. He was probably drunk. He got frustrated because he'd been turned down time and time again by these women all over town. And I think there's a very good chance that he didn't even consider it until he had gotten into her car. And I would guess that he made a split-second decision just before they reached his house.
Right.
And I say that because otherwise, there was no reason to even go near his house.
Right, and implicate his home, yeah. Come on.
Exactly. You know, Lori didn't know him and certainly didn't know where he lived, so he could have directed her right from the start to drive out of town.
Anywhere. Drive anywhere.
Anywhere. So I think that as they were approaching his house, he suddenly decided that he was going to do this. We don't know if he attacked her then and he drove them out of town, or if he convinced her that he needed her to drive him to where the car was later found. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Diego Hernandez is a monster who did monstrous things, and we're probably never going to know and can definitely never understand why he did what he did.
Along with so many others.
Almost every murder. Almost every one of them you just cannot understand. I mean, I was reading a story about this guy in Texas that some guy raped his 5-year-old daughter, and so he beat him to death, and he's going to face no charges. That's an understandable murder.
I understand that.
Those are rare, but that one is understandable. I do think that there is a cautionary tale in this whole story. We all want to be good people. We want to help people out. We want to offer help to those that need it. But it's important to remember that we never know someone's intentions, and it is not worth the risk of giving a stranger a ride, no matter how large your heart is or how pitiful they seem. You know, this makes me think of Ted Bundy, who used to wear the cast on his arm in order to convince. I mean, he looked pitiful, he looked broken, and then he would
fairly handsome.
Yeah, and the happy face killer, I can't think of his name. Keith Jesperson.
There you go.
He kept a picture of his children on his sun visor so that he could show women that, and they would trust him. So you can't trust anybody. You just can't. Lori's life might have ended in tragedy, but that isn't her whole story. That's the one everybody hears, but that's not her whole story. She lived 57 years before that tragic night.
Yeah. Sadly, that night will punctuate it forever, though.
Exactly. That's how she'll be known and why she is known. Her friends, family, and co-workers all described her as a beautiful soul inside and out. She was extremely warm and caring, and she had a soft spot in her heart for rescue dogs, and she was providing a home for 2 of them at the time of her death. She raised a very nice-looking, responsible son he now has a family of his own, and she touched the lives of all who were fortunate enough to know her. I watched an interview with Binge, and although the coworkers and stuff described him as kind of a creepy guy or whatever, the interview really made me see that, at least in my opinion, he was being very sincere. I mean, he described her the same way. He said that she was the most beautiful person he'd ever known in his life, and he was probably in his 60s at that time, maybe even early 70s. And he
Doesn't say that by the name.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so.
No, yeah.
But he was definitely an older guy. He said that she was the most beautiful person inside and out that he had ever known. And they were just really close friends, and he just loved to be around her because she just exuded positivity all the time. So that, with what all of her family and her friends say, she was just an amazing person.
And with all that, I know there's a bigger thing at hand, but my bleeding heart wants to know where her dogs are now. Where did the dogs go?
I believe, actually, that her boss, Kathy, took them. I can't say that 100%, but I kind of got that indication from the interviews and stuff that I watched. So, but to that point, after researching her life and her death as deeply as I did, I feel like I've come to know her in some respects. Mm-hmm. She grew up on cattle ranches, just like I did, and I feel that she is someone that I could have gotten along well with.
Same.
And yeah, and as is the case in most of these stories, the world truly lost a treasure on the night of her death. Lori Bray deserved far better than what she got from this sad sack. Her death reminds us to honor the good in people, but to protect it too. So thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay curious, Stay vigilant and stay safe.